Okay, good afternoon. Hi. I can see myself and John got the graveyard shift. So we get to be very brief. My name is Terence, for the guys that I did not meet yesterday. I can't say I'm the greatest fan of public talking. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk slightly differently. Hold on now. User groups. With various communities. And I'm just going to really talk about some of the more practical, or particularly like sort of approaches to actually going out and doing this. And I'm also going to generally talk a little bit about human-centered design. I may cover some stuff that Angus spoke about, but as I said, I think I've got like a 10-minute deadline, so this is going to be pretty quick. You may notice if you read through your brief, somewhere in that brief we ask you to start developing a problem ecology. And I'm going to really talk a little bit about problem ecologies, how we sort of understand them, how they're used in design, and probably try describe their value and how you guys can actually go out and construct them. So this is probably very much a toolkit in actual like sort of the practical applications of doing human-centered design. If you need to get good images about ecologies or ecosystems, usually if you find around about grade 4, teaching, it's usually the best place to go. And I actually found these, I thought these were pretty cool. Okay, so I was talking about ecologies. The word ecology is very simple. It's a scientific exploration and understanding of ecosystems. But I think in the terms of how we use them, probably looking at an ecosystem is much more easy to understand. Now, we all know a little bit about ecosystems. I think this is something living in like a beautiful country like our own, where nature is such a big thing. These are things that we all learn very early on. And we know stuff like if the dung beetle, gets wiped out for some reason, the marilla tree is not going to be planted and the elephants are going to die. So we know there's like a connection. And that's really what an ecology is about. An ecosystem. We know not only do the wild pigs frolic and drink water, but they've also got like a relationship to the woodpecker. We may not know what it is, but we know within that environment, within that ecology, there's some kind of connection. Okay, so hold that thought for a while. All right, this is a chair, okay? And we're going to start off by talking about non-complex problems. Okay, and when we talk about design, we're talking about a non-complex problem. We just say it's often as designers, and it's perfectly okay to admit to this, we sometimes do design work where we don't really have to think too much. Okay, we don't have to deal with the community, we don't have to understand where they're coming from, we just really have to answer the brief. These things do happen. This talk is not about these kind of problems. What we're really interested in is dealing with problems that are complex and that are difficult to understand and difficult to know what is the right answer. It's not going to be a jive at industrial designers. Cheers. Okay, so you've all heard of Richard Buchanan, a very famous sort of design theorist. And he's one of the guys who probably made the term, he didn't invent it, probably made the talk about wicked problems. He probably made it very popular. So Richard Buchanan, and this relates back to the chair, he says, he questions a designer who relies on predetermined design solutions. Okay, describing the repercussions of a categorical approach to design as mannered imitations of an earlier invention that are no longer relevant to the discovery of specific possibilities in the situation. So what he's saying is sometimes we can't just assume that what we have in terms of the products that we as designers are familiar with, we can't just keep applying them. We need to be more critical and more reflective. And he says the problem with just using these categorical designs, solutions, is that it implies that all problems are alike. Furthermore, it also implies that things haven't changed and contexts remain the same. And I think an example of this is like if we carry on designing cars, just because that's what we've always done as car designers, where obviously it's a problem, it's a form of solution that in many ways I think we can all attest to is not necessarily sustainable. The approach of solution-based thinking often nullifies innovation simply by biasing creativity with existing conditions, which most often contribute to the lack of innovative results. Instead, we need to look at the root conditions, the economies of the surrounding context, and the behaviors associated with functioning and adapting within these conditions. In the design process, research and evaluation are often more important than conclusion and prototypes. And I'm sure, Angus, you probably spoke about it around a lot of this kind of stuff. Okay, and I think we also got to the point where we said design is inherently a social activity and is strongly related to the world of people. Okay, now the problem here is the world of people is incredibly confusing. And if we try and understand, we are led to complexity. If we just look at this example over here, what causes crime in Marvel, we could look at any of these examples and we could say, maybe that's the reason why. We could also say most of them put together, probably is the same, is also the cause. What we also look at, we could look at the same place, we could look at the same set of probably cause factors, and if we looked at Dobsonville, then we would say that, again, the whole arrangement would shift, and the data and the complexity behind it would, again, increase. So just at a very basic level, whenever we look at the world of people, we're going to have a certain amount of complexity. If we go back and we look at design thinking, I don't know if you spoke about this, which is the very famous IDEO model, okay, which says basically, if you want to be practicing design thinking, you've got to be looking at desirability, feasibility, and viability. And that, of course, desirability is usually what people want, feasibility is what is possible, and viability about what is financially viable. Now, all these three things together, in essence, are bringing with them their own set of complexities. And this becomes pretty interesting because a lot of us, when we look and we think about human-centered design, we tend to think about looking at the world of people. Okay? And we also tend to very easily forget about these things, about feasibility and viability. Which I kind of think about as the testicles of human-centered design. And we tend to focus, and because we're thinking about the world of people, which to us has been designers, and we kind of naturally almost flow to, we think about all these different processes. Okay? We think about, hey, we've got to engage with people, we've got to understand them, we've either got to be semi-callous and pretend we're doing it by doing something like contextual design, or we can be deeply embedded and be doing something like co-design. All of these are research processes that help us to understand the world of people. Okay? And this is good, and this is valuable. And we do these things by all these kind of methods. Okay? Testicles. The main thing what we get from that is if we just look at that, is we tend to, if we're doing those research processes, we tend to get a lot of data. Okay? And this data creates a complexity. And it depends who we're asking, we get different sets of data pools. And so it grows, and we actually really often, we're left with a lot of data. And I think this is kind of a point that's worth stopping for just saying. Is you guys, most of you, have any of you done a human-centered design project yet in your course? Okay, human-centered design, and I'm not even going to talk about working with other communities that are perhaps maybe out of our familiarity. It's incredibly hard work, okay? And it's difficult to do, and as a student, you're not going to go out and do it right the first time. And this is something that you practice and you experience and you get better with. Okay, so our kind of point and what I'm sort of interested in is how do you actually begin to be a human-centered design, and how do you actually structure those kind of processes? The last thing I just want to mention before I kind of move on to the concluding section of this, is also, I'm talking very generally about human-centered design. I'm going to take 5. Is that it's human-centered design, we often practice it with other communities, okay? But human-centered design is a process of design that we can practice if we're working with banks, if we're working at the highest level, as well as the middle level, as well as community levels. It is a design process that is not necessary about working with community engagement. And that's why the value of it is it really teaches us how to apply, how to work as designers generally, not just in specific scenarios. Okay, so very quickly, we all know what a wicked problem is. It's a complex problem, it's something that we do not know how to solve, okay? Because there can be just many different solutions. And in order to understand, to try to think about the different solutions in order to solve it, we first got to understand what that problem is. So if we think about a problem ecology, it's very much, you can think about it as the natural habitat of the wicked problem. So what I'm actually, this is a tool that I'm sort of suggesting. It's not the tool that you have to use, but it's a really great tool for building up a problem ecology. And what it does is it looks at these very different areas, and it allows you, as a designer, as a novice designer particularly, when you're thinking about how you want to engage with the community, this really puts out a kind of a set of categories that will really kind of allow you to perhaps get the widest lens, as well as a very specific, like sort of nuances of engaging with people. Over here, and I think I just want to quickly explain the model. I put some additional notes in. I've also included an article on this. Really what it does is it says these are the different categories in order to understand the problem. What it's not doing, it's not necessarily showing any kind of hierarchy. It's not necessarily saying that any of these have more value, okay? Nor is it saying that you have to apply any kind of research methodology in these areas. All what it's really saying is to account for context, to really understand what are the forces that create or kind of like condition and control or argument particular problems. You need to understand all those various aspects. So just to round off within my 30 seconds, okay, is included in this PowerPoint, it really just breaks down what are those categories are, what they are about. And it also tends to, what I've also included here is a couple of examples of how it can be used. So what it really does, what's sort of at the heart of this model is it allows you to have like a general overview of the problem, okay? But it also having that data and being able to turn it into like sort of insights and to analyze and synthesize it, work at it, it really allows you to, as a designer, to be able to look at your data and be able to like perhaps make strategic decisions in such a way that the choices you make are not discrete, that they actually talk to a systematic approach to solving problems. This is a wonderful projector, but if you had to look at it, if you see it closely, I think that the sort of the darker, there are red areas that sort of highlight the problems. Okay, so I think that was a bit rushed, but I think there is an article with it, and I think if you just use this model just as a generally, I think on Monday when you start thinking about questions and you start thinking about what kind of research approaches you need to do to get the right kind of information back, we can talk a little bit more about this in the separate groups. Okay, thanks.